Hello, Makatao.
Damola, how are you?
I'm fine. I would need to, I'll need you to remove the restriction on sharing screen, so I'll be able to share my screen whenever I want to.
That is so true. So I think I first need to share my screen and then stop share, and then it will let me. Okay, can you try and share your screen now?
Okay, it works. It works now.
Very good.
Good day, I'm the annual scholarship. Good day, sir. Can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you. How are you?
Oh, okay.
Is your first name Adiolu or Aremu?
My first name is Adeolu. My surname is Aremu.
Okay. How are you doing?
I'm doing fine, sir. How about you, sir? How's everything over there, sir?
We thank God, and thank you for organizing this for your students. I think that's very commendable.
Thank you very much, sir.
Okay, I think it's a minute past the time. If you don't mind, Adiolu, you can start.
Okay, please let me know when to start.
Yes, you can start now.
Okay, I can start. Okay. So first off, I would like to welcome everyone to this educative and informative webinar. And personally, I would like to appreciate Mike Etao's annual scholarship. And on behalf of the entire executives and every members of the Nigerian Universities Engineering Student Association, FUNAP chapter, that's Federal University of Agriculture, Abeokuta. So on behalf of everyone in the College of Engineering, I would love to appreciate Michael Taiwo Annual Scholarship for honoring our invitation to organize this webinar for our students. And I must say, I'm very, very glad and happy that they accepted our webinar. So moving forward, in the next few minutes, or about 1 or 2 hours, we'll be learning more about how to secure postgraduate scholarships in developed countries. And I believe one how tough it is. I hope I'm back now. Hello, can anyone hear me? Okay. As I was saying, in the next few hours, we'll be learning about how to secure postgraduate scholarships in developed countries. We all know how expensive it is for some people, if not most people in Nigeria, to apply and have their postgraduate studies abroad. So, and I'm really happy that this webinar came into fruition. And we have lots of speakers. We have about 6 speakers that will be addressing us regarding a series of topics. So we have, firstly, we have Damola Olaiton. He's a graduate of FUNAB from the Department of Civil Engineering. So he's currently a PhD student at Princeton University. So personally, I've known Damola Olaiton when he was still in FUNAB personally, and I'm very glad that he's also a part of the speakers for this webinar. Then we also have Promise Epo. She's also a graduate student from Princeton University. We have Goodluck Agu, a graduate student from University of Alberta. Goodluck is also a past student of FUNAB. He finished from mechanical engineering from the College of Engineering to FUNAB. And we have Adefisoye Matthew. He's a PhD student of Syracuse University. If I get this spelling correct, Syracuse University. Then we have Fumilayo Ajayi, a predoctoral research professional from the University of Chicago. Then finally, we have Michael Taiwo himself in person. He's also a speaker in today's webinar. So we'll be learning about a series of topics today. And we'll be learning about how to research about schools. Why selecting your schools you should apply to. So learning on how to select the right schools, emailing prospective supervisors in your preferred schools, and then we also are facing the GRE, so for how to raise them, how to pass them very well. Then we have the how to write an academic CV, resume, and a winning statement of purpose, how to write your SOP, and then the academic CV very well, and then getting recommendation letters. That's probably from your university and from the people that wants to recommend you. Then we have preparing for graduate school interviews. So how to ace your interviews, how to go to your interview effectively. So all these topics will be addressed today in this webinar. And then finally, I would like to appreciate Michael Taiwo's Annual Scholarships once again for this opportunity. We don't take it for granted. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Damola. I think you can start your session.
Hi everyone. My name is Damola Olaito, and I'll be taking you on. Firstly, we're going to start with how to write an academic CV and how to write a winning statement of purpose. So as Adeolu said earlier, I'm sharing my screen. I don't know if you can see me and see it right now. Michael Taiwo, can kindly confirm
I
for
can
me if
see
you can
it.
see my screen. Okay.
I can see your screen.
So as Adeolu said earlier, I studied from the Federal University of Agriculture, Abeokuta, where I earned my bachelor's degree in civil engineering, and currently I'm pursuing my PhD degree at Princeton University. So the applications, academic CV and the statement of purpose are two very essential documents that you would require to apply to grad school. And to win scholarship opportunities that are open to several students in the world, you need to have very outstanding documents to set yourself different from several other applicants. So whenever people read your academic CV or your statement of purpose, they understand what you're trying to do, the story you're trying to tell them, what you want to come and do when you eventually get the offer to work with them. So let's start with the academic CV. Usually the academic CV should be of like 3-page length. Usually people write 2, so it's more concise, and people who want to read it know that all your information is within just 2 pages, instead of them like reading 6-7 pages and a whole history. So usually the academic CV is more like a summary of your undergraduate background, your research experience, your work experience, honors and award presentations, whatever you've done, just find a way to put them together in a concise manner. So it shouldn't be too long, whereby whoever wants to read it just starts reading and reading and reading without even getting the main points you're trying to pass across to them. So the content is supposed to be your full name and your contact information, say a valid email address, your LinkedIn profile can be attached, a phone number. Sometimes people usually include their addresses as well. And then the next section should be your undergraduate education and the duration in which you did your undergraduate education, just the years. So in this section, you need to include your CGPA, your thesis, which we also call our undergraduate project, the title, and probably whoever supervised you. So because most of the time, some faculty members usually have several people they've worked with before. So there might be a situation whereby the person who actually who was your supervisor during your undergraduate project might have a connection with one of these professors out there. So whenever these people see the name of your advisor and they feel like, oh, I know this person, then they tend to sometimes get influenced by the fact that if this person continues publishes good work, then they believe the supervising you must have been an excellent student to be supervised by them. Then your research and work experience, it needs to be very short and concise. Just include the points that shows where you did the research or where you worked, and maybe 2 bullet points that summarizes what you learned there and how you contributed to the success of the organization you worked with. Then honors and awards, you can include academic awards you received in school, maybe scholarship awards and stuff like that. You can include them in your CVs, as this also polishes your CV. Then other certificates, say you took a course online, like building information modeling, statistical mechanics, Python, C++, coding languages, anything. You can also include them in your CV, in the other certificates, in the certificates you have. Then if you have affiliations to any body, any school, any board, like the NUESA, FUNAB, NUESA in general usually have an affiliation with the Nigerian Society of Engineers. So if you're affiliated to these education bodies or technically work bodies, you can also include them in your CV. Then extracurricular activities, say you volunteer to do something, you partake in an outreach program. These are things you can also include. If you were a leader in your during your undergrad, maybe you took positions like a secretary, a president of a certain association, you can also include them in your CV. Then for the references, most of the time people used to count references as an optional input, because when you're submitting your applications, there's always a section where you submit references. So irrespective of having them in your CV, your school will still require you to your referees to send in your recommendation letters and stuff like that. At the end of my presentation, I'm going to show you an example of a well-detailed CV. Like I'm using mine as an example, which was the one I used when I was trying to submit my applications. So moving forward, I'm going to talk about the SOP. That's the statement of purpose, which is also a very important document. This is as important as your CV because this is supposed to be an explanation, an essay that explains your CV and what you want to do when you're applying to the school. So basically, it's usually like 6 paragraphs long, but you could take it to like 7 or 8 paragraphs. That's if you see that the flow of one paragraph is maybe truncated at some point. You can break it and convert it to 2 different paragraphs. So technically, your paragraph 1 should have an introduction, your problem statement, and your research interest. What do you want to do? What is the motivation of trying to pursue this research? Most of the times, people try to tie the problem statement and their research interest towards their childhood, how they were growing up. Probably, while I was growing up, myself and my dad, we used to work on like building farmsteads. Probably you're trying to be a structural engineer. You could make an example of how you were building farmsteads with your dad, and your inquisitiveness to understand how these things work made you pursue a civil engineering degree for your undergrad. And now that you want to apply to grad school, you're planning on advancing the knowledge you already have. So your paragraph 1 should encompass that. Then your paragraph 2 should basically be a summary of the knowledge you've gained during your undergraduate studies, the courses you took that align towards your research interest, align towards your grad school application, stuff like that. If you had leadership positions in your undergraduate studies as well, you can also include them. What did you do? Did you take tutorials? Did you teach several of your course mates? Stuff like that. You can include them in your SOP as well. Then paragraph 3 and paragraph 4. Technically, this portion could actually be like 5. It could be like 3 different paragraphs, say 3, 4, 5. That's if you intend to break your paragraphs to several parts, because your work and your research experience need to align with your research interests. They need to tell whoever is reading it what you learned during the work experience and the results you were able to gather. Say you want to talk about your undergraduate project in your SOP. You would firstly talk about the topic. What research question were you trying to ask? And a line that summarizes the result you found. Stuff like that. Within like 2, 3 paragraphs, you should be able to do that. Then moving on to the next paragraph, say paragraph 5, you need to state reasons why you're selecting this school and that particular program. So this is the point whereby you also help the school in polishing themselves. So you're trying to say, okay, this school is the best school in civil engineering. This school is the best school in economics. This school is the best program. This program is the best program in this. That is what you're trying to do. You're trying to say, okay, your school is a very, very good school. And here I am trying to come into this school so I can contribute to the development of your school as well as the development of myself. Then going forward, you need to also tie your SOP towards a faculty member. So this faculty member is someone who happens to have similar research interests with you. If you go through schools' application portals or the requirements for application, you see some of them say, oh, you need to refer to a professor. What do you want to work on? Who is in the department that you feel you want to work with? Things like that. So that's where you refer to a faculty member with aligning research interests. And definitely the last paragraph should be like a conclusion, like a brief summary of everything you are trying to say. Then if you want to, like this, I attached YouTube references that are very, very good. I can tell you that Best Man Academy was essential for writing my SOP personally, because they go through a step-by-step, paragraph by paragraph explanation of how to write your SOP with examples. And when he's explaining an example, it takes his time to explain every single sentence to tell you why it is there, what it is doing, and stuff like that. So those are the few points I have for writing an academic CV and a statement of purpose. I'm going to stop this share now, then I'm going to show you an example, which is the documents I used when I was applying myself. I'm coming, just give me a minute, please. Okay. So starting with the statement of purpose and the academic CV. As I said earlier, it's supposed to carry your name, telephone numbers, your email. Yeah, I didn't include my LinkedIn profile, but you can also include your LinkedIn profile. Then going to education. As I said earlier, you need to include where the course you studied, the school you studied from, probably your CGPA, and the duration of your study, of your undergraduate study. So mine is from 2014 to 2021. So now the duration of your study should end at when you receive your transcript, not the academic year or the session. Like for me, I was supposed to graduate with the 2018-2019 session, but since I received my transcript in 2021 is the year you need to include as the end of your undergraduate study. So yeah, I also have my dissertation. This is the title, and this is the supervisor. Then your research interests. What do you want to do? These are my research interests. I would love to work on environmental engineering, eco-hydrology, sustainable environment, and climate change. So work experiences that I had before while I was preparing my CV. I worked as a graduate engineer at Scholar Lighton and Associates in Lagos State, Nigeria, because you're not applying to Nigerian university. So you need to tell them probably the country, the state where you did your work. So these are bullet points that summarizes all I did while I was working as a graduate engineer. Then when I was a teacher at Crown Lake Secondary School in Songwater, so that's it. Bullet points that summarizes, 2-3 bullet points that summarizes what you did. As simple as possible, as concise as possible. You don't want the reader to just continue reading stories and stories and stories. You need to be as short as possible so that in under 2-3 minutes, they are done reading your CV. So these are just work experiences. Then I did not include my research experiences because I do not have a publication yet. Some people have publications during their undergrad and they also get to include the publications in their CV. So I had like technical and soft skills, which includes AutoCAD, Orion, Python, stuff like that. Then academic membership, I was a graduate member of the Nigerian Society of Engineers, just like I said earlier, and the year I became a graduate member. Then certifications that I had certifications from health, safety, and environment, and these were the consulting firm that provided me with the certification. This was the year I obtained the certifications. Then this is Jovian. I obtained certification of data analysis with Python, machine learning with Python. And these are the years, the period I obtained those certifications. Then switching to leadership roles and volunteering service. These are the things I did. You could include, I was the chairman of the conference planning committee. I served as a welfare secretary to the Association of Civil Engineering Students, FUNAB chapter. You can include these things as well in your CV. Then moving on to awards and recognition. I was the best graduating student of my department, and this was the session. I received the honorary award from the All FUNAB students in 2017. I included that. Award of Excellence from NUESA itself. Thank you, guys. I included that. Then my Katawa scholarship. I was awarded a scholarship in 2021. It's included there. Then the Federal Scholarship Board. This was a scholarship for my undergrad from the federal government from my third year till I graduated. And for me, I included references just because I wanted it to be 3 pages, basically. but you can actually you can also keep your references off the CV. So going to an example of my SOP, I'll try to be brief as I can. So basically what I was trying to do here is the first sentence was talking about the problem statement. There is a demand for infrastructural development in my country. And that is what developed my interest in civil engineering. That is my problem statement. The problem statement was the demand for infrastructural development. Actually, it's not just in my country. It is globally, because as the population continues to rise, there would always be demand for infrastructural development to house the populations. So my reason for this demand, this problem statement, is because with the populations rising, new residential and commercial spaces are a must. You need to provide housing for the rising population. Therefore, there is a demand for infrastructural development. So what I did was I looked through literature and I found a reference, a statistical reference, and I put it in my SOP. And I also provided the link. So whoever is reading my SOP and wants to verify my statements has the opportunity of doing that. Then I spoke about what the construction industry uses and how I intend to come in. So I said the construction industry uses finite natural resources, say the cement, sand, and stuff like that, and also contributes to environmental degradation. Therefore, requiring the usage of several sustainable infrastructure materials and robotics and automation in construction, attempting to accelerate the construction process and reduce the effects of the construction industry on the environment. That was what I wanted to do. So then I said that my ultimate goal was to become a university professor, a worldwide researcher, and an educator, and to contribute significantly to the sustainability in construction through research, teachings, and outreach. To accomplish my goal, what do I need to do? I am applying to the Department of Civil Engineering at Stanford School of Engineering, New York University. So yeah, this first paragraph is explaining the problem statement, my research interest, what I need to do to achieve my research interest, and my future goals. Then the next paragraph, I moved to talking about my undergraduate studies, what I learned in school, how I learned it, how I applied it, stuff like that. Then the reason why I had a break here was because there was no flow between learning my what I learned in my undergraduate studies, courses I learned, to extracurricular activities. So I decided to break it. Then I talked about my extracurricular activities separately. So yeah, I was talking about how I was able to still tutor my colleagues, which provided me a strong affinity for teaching. Because most of the time, whenever you applying to scholarships abroad, it is either you being a teaching assistant or you being a research assistant. So you need to provide them with the leverage that you are available for both. Whichever one they provide you with, you're ready to take it. I'm proving to them that I have an history of teaching. And I'm also going to prove to them that I have an history of research. I think my time is fast spent, so I have just 2 minutes left and I need to rush this now. So I spoke about my extracurricular activities and what I did. Then I spoke about my CGPA and the federal government scholarship I obtained from my 3rd year till the end of my studies. So yeah, 3rd paragraph, I'm talking about my undergraduate thesis. I spoke about my supervisor. I spoke about what I did. Paragraph, I think this is paragraph 5. I broke my SOP to very short paragraph. So this is paragraph 5. This is me talking about my work experience, all the the industrial training that I did. So your Cyrus 1, your Cyrus 2, your SWEP, you can put it all together in a paragraph, basically. Then this was me talking about my NYSC. That was when I taught mathematics to secondary school students at. So yeah, again, I'm talking about my experience with teaching. Then the 7th paragraph, I think. Yeah, this is the 7th paragraph. Yeah, I'm talking about the school itself. Why am I applying to the school? The program is a very good program. It provides me with an excellent opportunity to achieve my goals. Its curriculum aligns with my research interest in structural engineering, stuff like that. And here is where I spoke about referring to a faculty member who has worked extensively on these things. So that is the person that I feel my research interests align with. And that is the person I feel I want to work with, which is required. Then I concluded my my SOP with a statement I saw online by someone who also wrote his SOP. So he said, as a teaching assistant, I'll provide my students with an interesting learning environment. And as a research assistant, I will leverage your prior experience to advance the group's research. So yeah, I'm telling them, okay, if you provide me with the teaching assistantship, this is what I'm going to do. If you provide me with the research assistantship, this is what I'm going to do. And I said, thank you. And I'm looking forward to joining their departments. So thank you very much for coming to the webinar. This is my section on how to write winning academic CVs and a winning statement of purpose. Thank you very much. Michael, you can have the floor now.
No, that's a clapping hand, not a question hand. Well done. I think that was well done. Good luck. You want to start your section now?
Okay, hi everyone. My name is Goodluck Agu. I'm a master's student at the University of Alberta, the Department of Mechanical Engineering. And yeah, I'm getting into my second year. So I'll be taking the selecting the right schools section. And I'll also be taking the how to get reference letters section. So just quickly, let me share my screen because I have a presentation here. Okay. Okay. Oh, okay. I would have to.
Hi, since Goodluck is not here, maybe I should just take the section on how to prepare efficiently for the GRE and the TOEFL. Okay. Hello once again, everyone. I'm sure you might be bored of seeing my face right now. So I'm going to be taking you again on how to prepare efficiently for the GRE and the TOEFL. So these slides were prepared by Fumilayo Ajayi, but she's currently unavailable. So I am giving reference to her. So I do not take the works that belong to her. So yes, the GRE and the TOEFL are also essential examinations that you might be required to take to give yourself a competitive edge over several other applicants. Because when you're applying for scholarships abroad, it's going to be a global thing. It's not just Nigerian applicants. And when you're trying to defeat people coming from several other countries, you need to have a beautiful application. Just let me just tag it like that. So the GRE, the TOEFL can amplify your application. They can provide you with a winning edge. So the GRE is a standardized exam that is taken by ETS basically. So most schools that require the GRE tend to believe that the GRE is a generalized exam, because if I'm coming with a first-class degree from FUNAB, someone else is coming with a first-class degree from UNIBEN, someone else is coming with a first-class degree from University of Pennsylvania, Texas State University, stuff like that. We all have first-class degrees. They believe we are all very good students. So the GRE is supposed to be like a defining examination that proves, okay, this person could be more better than this person, stuff like that. So the GRE consists of 3 sections. That's the verbal section, the quantitative section, and the analytical writing section. Usually the verbal and the quantitative sections are scored on the scale of 130 to 170. So the highest score you can get is 130, and the lowest score you can get is 130 in 1 point increments. And the analytical writing ranges from 0 to 6 with half point increments. So you can score from like 0, 0.5, 1, 2.5, stuff like that. Then how does the test look like? So from what I learned this morning, the ETS is going to be changing the structure of the GRE test. Initially, it used to be a total time of 3 hours, 45 minutes, whereby the analytical section has 2 different tasks. You analyze an issue, then you analyze an argument, and it's 30 minutes per task. Then the verbal reasoning used to be 2 sections, the quantitative reasoning used to be 2 sections. Then there was usually 1 section that they term it as an experimental section, which is not graded. But from what I learned when I was preparing for the GRE, I heard that the experimental section is usually a section that provides the student taking the test an avenue to have a better grade. So say you have a 151 let's say you have a 150 in your verbal and a 160 in your quantitative. They tend to give you an opportunity to take 1 more verbal section to take your verbal score a little bit higher. But now, starting from this month, from September 2023, I think towards the end of the month, they are going to be changing the structure of the GRE. So now it's going to be 1 essay task for the analytical writing, 2 quantitative reasoning sections, 2 verbal reasoning sections. I currently do not know how the grading is going to be, if it's going to change from what it used to be initially. You can go to the website of the exam organizing body to see the new structure and how the grading is going to be. But basically, it's going to be 1 essay task, 2 sections for quantitative reasoning, which is similar as before, but reduced number of questions. Then the verbal reasoning is still going to be 2 sections, but reduced number of questions. So during this section, I'm not going to be talking in depth about how this verbal reasoning questions usually look like. You can go to ets.org to have a better understanding of how the section looks like. So what type of questions they ask, stuff like that. You can look that up on their website. There are several resources as well that you could use to gather knowledge about that. Then moving to what scores do you need for your graduate school application? So basically, I understand that majority of the schools that require the GRE usually focus more on the quantitative section rather than the verbal section, because they believe the verbal section, you can also still present things like the TOEFL to amplify your English proficiency. But for the quantitative measure, usually it is, as I said, it is 130 to 150. The median score across takers, I think globally is around 155 with an average of 154. But if you know you're going to be studying like engineering courses or mathematics intensive courses, say you're doing a very, very high computational graduate course, you will be required to have a very good score in your quantitative reasoning, because the faculty members and the school themselves want to see that this person is used to understanding mathematics, not just from an ODE point of view, but basic mathematics that are twisted, because most of the questions are usually twisted to present a fake scenario to you. But if you're able to decode this fake scenario and you still have a very good score, then the schools tend to believe that, okay, this person is very, very good in computation. So it depends on the type of school. The rule of thumb is that if you're applying to the top 10 schools, I mean the top 10 schools in the world, say the MITs, the Harvards, the Oxford University, stuff like that, you would be required to have like in the 90th percentile. Say you need to score 168 over 170. I've seen people score like 168, 169 in the GRE quant section, because most of the times it's usually easier than the verbal section. Not easy based on the fact that it is basic math, but based on the fact that majority of the people that are taking the tests are people who are highly learned, basically. I'm just going to use that word. So the verbal measure is usually less important than the quant, because they believe you're still going to have an additional document, which is your TOEFL, to support your English proficiency. But the best advice is you need to score above the average, which is 150. Then the analytical writing measure. Basically, the analytical writing measure is supposed to tell the school that you're applying to that I'm very good at analytical writing, because if you're applying to grad school, you'll be required to write your thesis, to write educational papers, reviews, abstracts, stuff like that. So they need to be able to understand that you're very good at writing analytically to concisely tell concisely tell readers that this is what I'm talking about, this is where I am heading to with my writing and stuff like that. So usually the required score is like 3.5. That's the average. Then the median is like 4. Add 4 over 6, because as I said earlier, the analytical writing is from 0 to 6. So moving off from GRE to TOEFL. So the TOEFL is an exam that supports your English proficiency. Most of the time, I think schools are now trying to eradicate these things for Nigerians, or for some Nigerians, or some schools, basically, because some schools are still adamant that every international student should be required to submit an English proficiency exam. So it could be the TOEFL, it could be the IELTS, it could be the Duolingo English test, and sorts of. So the TOEFL generally is broken down into 4 different sections, which is the reading section, the listening section, the speaking section, and the writing section. So the reading section is supposed to be, you read several passages and they ask you several questions. I think it's supposed to be 3 different passages with 20 questions in total. Then the listening section is whereby you listen to things. I think it's like 4 different listening tracks that you get. So it's more like either a discussion, a random discussion between 2 different people, or a professor addressing the students about stuff like that. So you listen and you answer questions from what you listen to. Then the speaking section is you get tasks about, okay, they create a scenario for you, then you discuss about it. Sometimes it might just be a basic scenario of you discussing about where you live, about yourself. It could be as simple as that. It could be like they give you a material to read and they say, oh, now that you have read this, summarize it in your own terms. Or you listen to a track and they're like, now that you've listened to this, summarize this in your own terms. Then the writing task is also two different writing tasks. So I think one of the tasks is going to be and it's going to be like an argument, whereby you pick a side of the argument and you write extensively on it. Then the second task is supposed to be a combination of a reading and a listening. Most of the times, those two things actually contradict themselves. So the task of the writing is to tell you to state or support an opinion. So you write your essay to pick a side of of what you listened to and what you read. So the score bands for the TOEFL is between 0 to 120, basically. It is 30 points per section. So your total score is going to be a sum of the 4 different sections. So whatever you score in your reading would be added to what you score in your listening section, to what you score in your speaking and your writing section. Then the general question people ask is, what is a good TOEFL score? It's a very, very valid question. But what I'm going to say is, it depends on whatever school you are applying to, as I said for the GRE. So some schools usually require that, you need to have a certain threshold, a certain benchmark score in all 4 sections. Sometimes they would say, okay, we need you to score above 20/30 in all sections. Some schools will say, 22/30. I've seen some schools demand for 25/30 at least, like Cambridge University, I think they demand for at least 25/30 in all sections. Princeton University, they demand for at least 27/30 in the speaking section, because they tend to understand that majority of the students that are coming to school in the United States will be required to give oral presentations and stuff like that. So they need every student to be proficient with English orally, because you might be very good with writing, you might be very good with reading, listening, but if you can't speak it fluently to a global audience, it's a stain to yourself. So that's why majority of the time they require you to have a very good score. But even if you don't make this score, some schools usually present their own personal oral exams, whereby you interact with a professor or faculty member or a school administrator, just to show that, okay, if you have the level of English required. And sometimes if you still don't get it, they usually require you to take an English language program exam or class in the school upon resumption, even after they must have admitted you. Because when I took my TOEFL, I'm using myself as an example for Princeton University, I didn't score up to 27/30 in the speaking section. So I was required to take the Princeton English oral exam, and I was able to prove to the administrator that yes, I was proficient with English, and it went that way. Then how to ace the GRE and the TOEFL? Basically, I would say there's no study plan that works. It just depends on yourself. It's just like studying for an undergraduate exam. Both of us might be reading at the same pace, but you are assimilating more than I am. So it's always different. If you would know your strength, definitely. So you know how to plan, okay, this is what I want to study at this time. This is what I want to study at this time. So, but preferably, I would say study for the GRE, basically. This notes written here are for the GRE, not for the TOEFL, because usually I used to tell people that the TOEFL is a little bit simpler than the GRE. Because when you're preparing for the GRE, whatever you learn for the verbal section of the GRE is almost sufficient for the TOEFL. You just need to understand how the TOEFL questions are and do a few practice questions and you're good. But I would advise that if you're preparing for these standardized exams, you take at least 2 to 3 months, to be able to confidently write the exams, because the exams are supposed to be a one-time thing. It's not something you take once and you come back, you plan to take again. You need to take it once, get a very good score, and move on. So there are several tests online that you could, there are several websites online that you could use to familiarize yourself with the test, how the questions are being asked. And there are also several mock exams to take to have a very good level of saying, of confidence that you're ready to write the exam. Then there are also conditions of exam based on the time. The time is usually very, very small. So you need to be as fast as possible. You need to be, so that's why Funmilayo stated here that you need to study under both timed and untimed conditions. So the time condition is whereby you're doing every single question in your practice test under the required time you would use to do it in the actual test. Then the untimed section is, okay, I have a sufficient amount of time. I need to be able to answer this question correctly. What do I need to do? Then you need to look at how long it takes you to answer such questions. So maybe when you see such question in the actual test, you'd get to know, maybe you're going to skip it and come back to it at the end of the test, or you're going to try to answer it at that point in time, stuff like that. So there are several resources online to familiarize yourself with the GRE and the TOEFL, but these are resources referenced by Funmilayo. So there's the ETS official guide to the GRE, there's the Greg Matt recommended resources, there's the Magoosh official handout, there's the ETS Math Review, there's the quantitative guide, there's the Manhattan Prep, there's Khan Academy, there's flashcards for verbal section. So the flashcards are more like vocabulary, a glossary of vocabulary words that are familiar, that are usually coming out in the GRE. So for you to understand, okay, what does this word mean? What is a synonym, the antonym, stuff like that. Then to take practice tests, there's a plethora of practice tests available. It's not compulsory you take only the ETS. You can take the ETS test, you can take the Manhattan, the Kaplan, the Princeton review. You can even go to YouTube. There are several people that have recorded videos of practice tests. You can also go to the internet to find yourself free practice tests online. Then there are several books you can also consider to look at practice questions. So the difference between the practice test and the practice questions is that the practice test is a model of the actual test, but the practice questions are just list of questions that allows you to go wild, untimed. But the practice tests are usually timed, like the actual GRE exams organized by ETS. Then these are blogs and that you could look at to see how to study for the GRE and how to avail yourself with required resources for the GRE. So once again, I'm going to say a very big thank you to every one of you that are listening to me. I hope I've been able to impact you with the required knowledge for how to prepare for the GRE and how to prepare for the TOEFL. Thank you very much.
Well done, Damola. You did great. I think Funmilayo to be proud.
Thank you very much.
All right, good luck.
All right. Sorry guys for the breaking transmission at the time. I don't really use Zoom. I'm a Google Meet guy. So, but quickly, let's move to the PowerPoint I have for today. And, okay. All right. Sorry. Okay. First session today is selecting the right schools, and so yeah, it's very important to select the right school. That's like the first step in the entire graduate application process. You have to be sure you're selecting the right schools, the school that fits your interests, the school that fits your personal goals, your professional goals. You want to select schools that you're thinking about employment opportunities as well. You're thinking about internship opportunities. You're thinking about research exploration. So it's a very important step, and it can make or mar your graduate school experience. Now, just to expatiate on the selection, right? The first thing to do is you want to know your goals. You want to know your academic interests. You want to consider faculty. You want to consider research facilities. You want to consider curriculum. You want to consider that these schools, because there are different schools. Let's say we have MIT, we have Harvard, we have Oxford. Everyone knows how MIT is probably the #1 school for like engineering, science, technological related, fields and area of studies. And while Oxford, for instance, would be like a pioneer in the arts. So you want to, check out all those things to be sure that you're selecting the right school, not just, with prestige in mind, but with fit in mind. That this school that you're, aiming at, fits your career and personal goals. All right. You also want to check your personal development, like schools that offer you opportunities for extracurriculars, leadership, networking, because all of those are also like important. Yeah. Graduate school is different from undergraduate school. You want to like grow as a person. Even your supervisors, your professors wouldn't treat you as like a kid from undergrad. They would most of the time treat you as a colleague because you're working together with them. They would give you respect. You would also respect them in return. So it's more about like a professional colleague to colleague relationship other than, a lecturer to like undergrad who is 16 or 17, who is just basically a child. All right, the next section we have here is the research and reputation. Okay, so I have something here, like I've already said, rankings. Rankings are very useful, right? You want to be sure you're getting into the top schools that, when you mention the name of your school, people would be like, you must be really smart to have gotten in here. But then while rankings are quite useful, they don't tell the full story. So you want to focus more on fits than prestige. Like I've said, and I'm reiterating, you should focus more on fits than prestige. And then the next one that we have here is faculty. You should look into their work, their publications, check their websites, check their research areas. Make sure that you're doing your homework, basically. You don't want to just start spreading your cold emails to basically everybody, sending emails. Make sure you've done your research, you've gone through their research papers, gone through their publications, so that if they call for like a discussion, because most of them would, before offering you a position, they would want to, speak with you, talk to you, have like a talk with you. So you want to be sure that you know what you're talking about. You want to know that you are like flowing in the conversation. You're not just, they ask you one question and then you don't know what to chip in. You want to be sure that you're very familiar with what you're doing and you want to express your interest like very clearly, why you'd want to do it, what you've done in the past, and how it fits into your goals. And it's also very important to, consider finances, right? Like that's probably the entire reason for, not the entire, but like one of the major reasons for like this seminar that we're having, because we're looking at scholarships, right? And different schools have like different funding abilities. Some schools have more scholarships than others. So you want to be sure that, this school that you're applying to has more scholarship, has more funding, has more assistantships, you understand? So that you sure that, if you gain admission here, you should at least get some funding. So funding, financial consideration doesn't only come in terms of like scholarships and assistantships. You also want to be sure that, maybe you're doing an MNG, you got a scholarship to do an MNG, or if it's an MSc, do they have like internship opportunities within your program? Is the school cited in certain locations where it would be easy for you to like, just quickly get an internship opportunity that would, improve your financial, what would I call it now? At that moment. For instance, let me give an example. For instance, we all know how California, let's say the Bay Area, Silicon Valley, it's almost like a hub for like tech companies. So let's say you have one scholarship offer from a school in the Bay Area or a school in Silicon Valley, and then you have another one in somewhere in Arizona. So let's say you've even considered both offers and you found out that the graduate assistantship at the university in Arizona is even substantially more than the other offer you're getting in the one in Silicon Valley. You would still have to, consider placements opportunities, because the one in Silicon Valley would probably give you, the opportunity to get into like a tech placement somewhere close. So these are all of the things you'd, take into consideration. Just make sure you're doing your analysis to find out the one which doesn't just fit you, but also like, measures into all your both short-term plans and long-term plans as well. Okay, so I have here like itemized the list of other considerations. You want to check location and lifestyle, although all these are probably lesser than the ones we've talked about. They are lesser in priority to the other ones we've talked about, but you want to check location and lifestyle. Or maybe you're a city person, you want to go to New York City where it's bubbling and you want to meet a lot of people, or you're someone who is more chill. You don't want to go to, you want to go be around the town or something. So all of that also comes into play if you have a lot of offers eventually. So these are the small minor things or minor nuances that you want to take into consideration. You also want to check the cost of living. Some certain places are way more expensive than other places, like NYC, for instance, would be way more expensive than Utah or Salt Lake City or something like that. So you also want to check program duration, right? Some programs would typically take around for master's program, it would typically take around an average of 2 years. PhD programs should take around 4, 5, or 6 years sometimes. Certain master's program would take even 1 year or a year and a half. So these are some other things that you would want to take into consideration. And then curriculum structure, you want to check the courses that are offered. Is this something you'd be interested in learning? You also want to check the competitiveness of like the program. Some programs are, more competitive. The MITs, Princeton's, Harvard, Stanford's are probably going to be more competitive than other programs because of, sheer amount of people applying to those programs. So you should, have something like that in mind when you're thinking of selecting schools. And then alumni network, although most people wouldn't consider this, but I think LinkedIn is a good place to start. You can quickly just search your schools on LinkedIn and then go through, people who have been there, see what they are doing currently, check what is they did while in school, what opportunities were offered to them. So these are like things you take into mind, especially when you start to have like lots of offers and you're trying to, make a final decision, because it can be very tough, to make that one decision. Because selecting schools, right, isn't just about selecting schools when you're trying to apply. It's also about selecting schools after you've had your offers and you're thinking of picking a certain school. So yeah, that's how it is. And okay, so I have here a list of helpful tips, things that can help you in the art of selecting schools. And the first one here is you identify schools that catches your interest, and then you make a list putting good fit in mind. I've said it several times. Good fit is probably the most important thing. I would say it's the most important thing when making a list of schools and trying to select one. So then also very important is that you sort your schools. You should sort your schools into like top schools, medium and safe schools. So top schools are schools that you feel stretches you. These are your dreams, the schools that, oh, this is the school I want to get into. Like, I would really want to be in this program. Maybe you've identified a professor who is like a pioneer in that field. I would really love to work with this professor. I would really want to be, around these people, do this work that they're doing. And then, yeah, those are your top schools. You should probably have like maybe 3 or 4 of those schools that you feel stretches you. They go over your assumed limits. I wouldn't say they go over your limits, but like your assumed limits. And then you have like medium schools that you feel fits you. Like you've checked your qualifications, your CGPA, you've checked your GRE, TOEFL scores, you've checked, your experience so far. So you just like set a number of schools that you feel fits you. These are schools you've got a good chance of getting into. And then you should have like a number of safe schools as well, because life can be very random sometimes. So even when you feel like you should have gotten to your medium schools, your safe schools might be the one that you'd eventually get into. But then, good enough, it also happens the other way. You might feel, oh, you should get into your medium schools, and then it's the top schools that come knocking. Because I know a lot of people who had a list of these top schools, medium schools, and safe schools, who thought they would even get into their safe schools, and then at the end of the day, they didn't even get into the safe schools. What happened was they got into their top schools. So it could happen either way, right? So, but you want to create a list of all of these, sort them into these categories, and then when you start shooting your applications, you have this in mind. And then one very critical thing is to also like look out for advertised positions to see faculty who are currently recruiting. Yeah, you want to be sure they're open positions. Some of them wouldn't even like advertise these positions, right? But you still need to maybe send cold emails or maybe reach out to people who are currently working in that lab or that group, and then maybe ask them or something, like reach out, be like, does your professor have like an open position here? So those are sort of things you want to, do. And then your list finally should be constantly updated. You don't want to just stick to one list. And the list you add at the beginning of your graduate school experience, because I can tell you something, when you start your graduate school preparation, when you start your graduate school preparation, I feel like it's a growth process, right? There are a lot of things you don't immediately know at the beginning, but like 2 months, 3 months, 4 months down the line, you start to become very strong with it. And then you have to like update your list. You find out that when you start your initial draft of your statement of purpose, you probably go back and look at it and you're laughing because it looks funny now. Because you've grown in the whole process, you're even able to like edit people's statement of purposes as well. So it's all a good process. So you should constantly update your list as well. So yeah, that's the first thing I have for the selecting the right schools. I would ask that questions be asked, but I would quickly want to go into the other section, which is getting recommendation letters. So I'll probably join the questions and answer both of them together. So the next session we have here is getting recommendation letters. All right, the introduction. So a recommendation letter basically provides insights into a person's qualification from like a third person perspective. So it's basically like someone you've worked with in the past, maybe your supervisor or someone who has lectured you in a class or two, who is able to say, oh, I've worked with so-and-so person. He's a wonderful person to work with. He's excellent. He's going to work hard. Someone who can basically provide, because almost every other thing in your application is from your own point of view. You don't want writing your statement of purpose. You don't want saying you've done so and so. And then we like ourselves, right? So we'll definitely always have good things to say about ourselves. But then someone coming from, coming from a third person perspective, you expect that someone can also say, hey, I've worked with so-and-so person. So don't just take his word for it. You can also take mine. And this person is actually very good to work with. And I'm sure you would enjoy the experience of working with him. So a strong recommendation letter can be a very deciding factor in your admissions and scholarships decisions. In fact, I would say it's up there. It's up there as probably the most important thing. A good recommendation letter can just shift everything in your favor, because once you get that very solid recommendation letter, which is not just very generic, but like very personalized, if it's even from a very reputed, because you never know, right? Academia is not a very, very large, it can be a very small world. Some of the professors you're reaching out to might have met with whoever is recommending you in certain conferences or like presentations. So it can happen. So once they get that sort of recommendation from that individual and they see how well they speak highly of you, they might want to take a chance on you, like just take the person's word for it. So yeah, it's very critical, very important. And then the first thing we have here is who to ask section. Who are the people you want to ask when looking for a reference? So first, right, the academic references. So ideally, you would want to speak with your lecturers, your supervisors, who are familiar with your work, who have worked with you in the academic setting. Those, I feel it's even very important, to contact those in your field of study or your field of interest, right? You don't want to, let's say you've taken a course in English, for instance. Of course, all of us took a course in English during our undergrad program. And then now you're thinking of doing a PhD in chemical engineering, for instance, right? You don't want to go and meet the English professor to write it. I mean, it's possible, right? There are certain of your abilities that they can speak to, but it's probably be better for you to reach out to maybe a chemical engineering professor who has worked in that area that you're interested in, and then they can speak much better to your ability in chemical engineering. So that's one for academic references. And then we have professional references as well. So if you've had relevant professional experience, probably you've worked on, you're thinking of doing a PhD in chemical engineering, you've worked in the oil and gas industry, and thinking of doing process engineering, something like that. You want to reach out to maybe your line managers in the company that you worked in, ask them to, provide, they can always, give a different perspective, as compared to your academic supervisors. They can provide a different perspective, tell them how you're able to, they can tell your, the admission committee how you're able to multitask. And, it's also very important, like I said, bonus points if this experience is related to your area of interest. You don't want it to be the case of you've gotten your undergrad degree from chemical engineering, and right now you're probably a radio host, and then you're picking like a reference from your radio host manager for your chemical engineering aspirations. And you mean there's some sort of conflict of interest. It can work, but it's not ideal, right? So you also want to avoid friends or family or anyone who cannot speak to your abilities relevant to the program. You don't want to reach out to your friend because there might even be some sort of bias there. Imagine and you're asking your father to or your mother to write a reference, so there might be some assumed bias there. So a little tip here, you should choose those who know you very well and can speak to your strengths in detail, backed with experiences from the past. So this is where it's good to be like a good student, right? Because your lecturers would they would know you, they know who you are, they can attest to your abilities. So it's always good when it's someone that knows you very personally. You can write something very detailed about you, write about your strengths. You don't want them writing something that just looks like they just woke up and said, okay, let me just do this thing so this person can stop disturbing me. You want it to be something that they are enthusiastic about. So yeah, it's very good to find someone who knows you very well. And then okay, we have the when and the how to ask. So lecturers, people in academia are quite busy people. Like even some of us who aren't professors or just being graduate students can even be like very busy, can get very intense sometimes. So you want to make sure that you're giving ample time before the deadline, to make them aware. I feel like 2 months is a good target to work with. You want to give them 2 months. I mean, you can even give them 6 months notice if that works for you. You understand? So you want to give them like ample time so it doesn't seem rushed. It doesn't seem like you're pressuring them. And then, so you let them have enough time, and then you should constantly send reminders to them. Oh, you have something to work with, and you would need their help at so and so time, something like that. And then the next one is you should provide context. Let them know, because different scholarships and different academic applications, they're all different. So you should let them know your motivations, your interests, how this admission application, how it's different from the other one. I mean, let's say someone, for instance, is applying to the Commonwealth Scholarship, another person is applying to Erasmus Mundus. I mean, some of these applications have like intricate differences. So you want to make sure that you're letting them know and how they differ. The Commonwealth, for instance, might want you to have like certain volunteering opportunity, volunteering work that you've done in the past to show you understand what I'm saying. While the graduate research assistants would probably want to focus on your research like experience in the past. So all of these are nuances that you should just put in mind. So you should explain to them why you've chosen that program and why you're applying for that scholarship. And then this lets them think about it so they can give you like a very thoughtful and specific letter. I mean, if it's possible, you can even plan a meeting. If that works, if they're willing to take you up on that, then you can also plan a meeting. And I think the good thing about planning a meeting is that some of these professors might just remember your face, so they might not exactly remember your name, and maybe seeing you in person might, bring back memories, and they'll be like, oh, I remember this guy from this class. He was very responsive in class, and yeah, things like that can happen. And then, okay, so the next one is what to provide. Okay, so it's a reference, right? And professors probably do not always have you in mind, so they probably need things, to kickstart their memory about you. So you want to, provide your resume or your CV that can show an overview of your achievements, your academic achievement, your professional achievements. So they can see this and know, oh, this person has actually been working hard. He has done so and so. This is the person's CGPA. These are the awards. These are the scholarships that he has won in the past. So you want to do something like that. And then it's also good. I mean, it's probably optional, but then you can send your statement of purpose as well to them, so they can understand your goals and your motivations. Like I said earlier, you should send the scholarship details. Just you don't have to make it very elaborate or very long. You can just brief them. You can even be like, you can say it in word, like maybe there's a call you give them. You can say, if it's an email, you can just write it briefly. Okay, I'm applying for a GRA or a GTA, and then just let them know what it is you're doing so they can tailor each recommendation. And then submission guide, because each reference have like different submission requirements. Some would, I think most would ask that the professor send it directly to them. They would probably have like a link created in their emails that they would just click and send directly. But some might still offer to they would have to write it and then with a letterhead, send you, and then you are the one who would upload it. So it differs. So you should be sure that they know what to do and how to submit the references. Okay, so yeah, we have the helpful tips for like the reference section. And I have here itemized some helpful tips. The first one I have here is you should send a reminder email about 3 weeks before the deadline. Like I said, it's all about prayer. You don't want to tell them 3 days before the deadline and start sending, repetitive messages. This can happen sometimes, yeah, but like you should try to avoid this. Send them deadline reminders way earlier before the deadline. And then I think it's very important to, for the second one, offer to draft this letter for them. Try to, because it can be difficult for them to come up with something of their own. They might not have the time, they might not want to they might not be very enthusiastic about doing that. So it's also very good to, offer to draft a letter for them that they can look into, edit certain things out, add certain things in. And then, yeah, it makes sense. It shows that you're proactive, it shows initiative, it shows that you're willing to start something, and then they might be, pick up on your energy and work with that. The third one I have here is you should reiterate, you should tell them how important this is. I remember during my time, I did this very, very, very clearly. I was like, this is one of the most important, if not very important. So you don't want something very generic. You should do something very, specific, something very personalized, something that would show that they are talking about you, not something that you feel can work for you and work for the next person and work for almost everyone in your class. Something that works for you and just you alone. So you should try to reiterate the importance of like personalized and detailed recommendation letters. So and of course you should send thank you notes after they've submitted the letter, because you'd probably need their help at some point later. You want to show that you're grateful because they've taken so much time, so you want to tell them thank you, and then after they submitted the letter. So yeah, I believe that's it. So okay, I have here, I don't know, it's not very, because I try to squeeze it in, but I don't know if it's very clear. But I can always send it. If anyone needs it, right? My email, I'll provide my email to the organizers, and then I can just send this sample so you can see. Maybe it can help with drafting your letter of recommendations. It's gotten from College Pond, www.collegepond.com. It's a very good example of a recommendation letter for someone who was applying for a Master of Science in Computer Science at Carnegie Mellon University. So yeah, I think that's it from my end. And yeah, thank you for listening. It's been a pleasure joining you guys here. And I'm always available. I'm on LinkedIn, and I'm also be accessed through email. Thank you.
That was a good one. Good luck. And trying to think through the agenda now. Am I next, Adilu?
Yes, Michael, time will go next.
Okay. My session is on preparing for graduate school interviews. So graduate school interviews, relatively speaking, they are a newer feature of the graduate school application process. For instance, when I was applying for my graduate school many years ago, it was the exception. I think I heard one person said they interviewed him, but it was very much the exception. Now it's more common. It's still not certain that you would have to sit through a graduate school interview, but it's more common now. And I think the reason is more common is because some schools are making GRE optional. Some are making TOEFL optional, whereas before those are absolute requirements. So if you're saying you want to waive the GRE and you want to waive this and you want to waive that, then there has to be a way that you still want to assure that the student that you are taking under your arms is solid. So the interview has become the way recently that schools are using to size up for lack of a better word, to size up the applicants. It's still an open debate in higher education whether this trend is going to continue or whether we're going to go back to how it used to be, where we have very few interviews and they just want your standardized exams. And the advantage of standardized exam, again, is standard. Everybody is competing on the same plane, regardless of where you went to, regardless of where you come from. Interviews is still not standard, and that's how I'm going to start. The interviews, they don't follow a particular format because it depends on the school, it depends on the program, and in fact, sometimes it depends on the professor. Some professors, they just want to get to know you, really. They already they've looked at your resume, they've looked at your statement of purpose and all that, and now they want to get to know you, and they want to all of them, I would say, maybe if I want to say the things they all have in common, all of them in general, they want to test your English language. So they want to know how well you can hear, how well you can speak, how well you can interact in English language, because the default language of instruction will be English. So they want to know how sound you are there. So that's number one. I also say number two in general is that they want to know how you fit into the program or into the research group. So I'm a manager and I interview people for work, and it's not very different too. It's like when a coach is trying to build his team, and he already knows the team he has, and he knows what else he needs so that his team can be a winning team. So when he's interviewing new players for his team, or he's scouting for new players, is looking for the right pieces to put in the puzzle so that the whole puzzle can be complete. And the interview is also like that too. So sometimes when they don't pick you, it's not really because you're not strong, or they don't like you just because you're not the right fit. And I think Good Luck emphasized the word fit several times. Sometimes it's just not the right fit. It's not about the strength of your application. Sometimes it's not about your strength as a candidate. It's just about, do you fit into what that professor is thinking about in terms of their research? There are many times that I interview people just at my work and I don't extend them an offer, not because they're not strong professionals, but just because I don't see a place for them in the team based on what I want the team to be doing next. And sometimes your graduate school application is like that. So I want you to keep that in mind. So that said, how do you prepare? The best way to prepare is just to ask. Ask them, what do they want to see? Some will tell you, okay, these are the papers that you need to research, and then let's talk about it as an interview. So I've seen cases where a professor would give you like 2 or 3 of their research paper, and then you would read it, you try to understand, formulate your questions, and then the interview is something as simple as, I said as simple, it might not be simple, but the interview might just be a case of that professor then asking you questions about what you've read. Of course, as they're asking you, they're also testing your English language in the process. They're testing your personality and how you process things and see if you're going to be a good fit. But also they're actually testing the actual content of the research and how sound you are. Some interviews are really just get to know you, where are you from? What do you want to do? What are your goals? Why did you pick this school? Why did you pick this research area? If this research area doesn't work out, what other research areas do you want? So some interviews are more general in nature. And some interviews, they're quite technical. They will just ask you to pick a topic that you've done, for instance, your undergraduate research, and they'll say, come and present it to us. Or if you've put it in your resume that you've published a paper, they'll say, yeah, the interview is just you talking about your paper. So again, all these interviews, they can come in different flavors, from we just want to know you, just have a chat with you, to something technical that you created, to something very technical that the professor or the research group created. You could reign the whole spectrum. But I would say ask them, and some of them would say, no, there is really no need for you to prepare, just show up. That's fine. The next thing you can do is, if you've asked the professors and you feel like they've not told you, they're just more general or more cagey in their response, try and find graduate students in that department and ask them how their own interview experience was. So let's say, for instance, you want to go to Damola's department in Princeton and you have an interview. It would be very smart for you to contact him and say, hey, what should I expect? Well, what do you think I'm going to be asked, and how do you think I should prepare? So ask the professors. Sometimes they are so very exact in why they are interviewing you and what they want to see, and that might be all you need. If you think you're not getting all you need, then I will go that extra step and try to look for students in that department and ask them. And then prepare accordingly, especially because no two interviews will be the same. So what will work for one school and one program might not work for another school, another program. So the general advice I can give you is don't be afraid to ask what is needed for you to prepare. Okay. Is Promise with us now? If
No, not yet. I can call her.
okay. If she's not here, yeah. I mean, while you're calling her, we can take that opportunity to answer any questions that has arisen in the last 90 minutes or so. I know there are several questions on, hey, can you share this presentation? Can you share this or that? The answer is yes, we will after tomorrow. We have an email list of all the people that registered. So we will send it to that email list. So right now, maybe just more specific questions rather than request for documents. Adiolu or Alison, can you read out any of the questions?
Okay, I have a question here.
Okay.
From Symbiat Salaudin. In a case where there are two professors with aligned interests, can we mention both professors in the SOP, that's in the statement of purpose?
Okay, I believe the question is addressed to me. So yes, you can mention both professors in your statement of purpose, but I'd advise you just do it strategically. Say, okay, Professor A's interest aligns with me because he has done this and I would like to do that with him. And if Professor A is not currently taking students, Professor B is an option. So I can remember I sent this message to someone, to a friend of mine, like 2 days back. So let me just like read how I sent it to him. So it was like, you reference the first person, then you could go like, oh, additionally, my interest in this also avails you with the opportunity to work with this other professor. So you can tie two professors into the same SOP, because most of the time, whenever you submit your application, it is not just the professor you reference that is going to read your application. It's going to be read by almost every faculty member. So if you reference 2-3 professors, they would get to read, all of them would get to read it. Do you get me? So it could be one of them that will take you. It might even be a professor that is not on your SOP that would eventually take you into his lab. Because whenever they see your application, some professors tend to have this instinct that tells them, oh, this person might have the kind of qualities that I require in my lab. So they could reach out to you by themselves to say, oh, I went through your application. This is what I do in my lab. If you're interested in joining my lab, you can reach out to me, then we can talk and stuff like that. So yes, the answer is yes. You can reference 2 different people on your SOP. Thank you.
Thanks, Amola. And I think we have Promise now. Promise, you ready to tell us on emailing prospective supervisors?
Yes, I am. Thank you, sir. Good day, everyone. Today I'll be talking about emailing prospective supervisors, and I'm going to share my screen. So first, it's an honor to be here, and thanks for looping me in, Professor Dr. Michael Tayo. So in terms of emailing prospective supervisors, there are a bunch of things I thought were relevant to this course. The first would be why should you do that in the first place? And then when are you supposed to do that? And then I would talk about how to structure your first email, and I would share some brief comments on follow-up emails, replying to a positive response, replying to a negative response as well. So why and when should you contact these professors, right? So the first reason is that you want to sell yourself. So there are a lot of people that are applying to the same program and department as you. So it's always useful to try to contact professors so that they can know that, oh yeah, this is someone that is interested in my own research. So the second reason you want to do that is you want to inquire whether there's a space in the research group you're trying to join. So, and why is this important? Because professors think about funding before planning to accept students. So in general, you want to ensure that the professor has funding for you. You want to know if the professor has funding for you. And so, because I think I heard some people talking about mentioning professors' name in SOP. So if you're also planning to mention their names, it's also great that you send an email so that they're aware that there's someone like this. So when should you do this? So I think the first thing I consider important is for you to identify a research interest. So they're very different types of research. So for example, if you're in computer science, there's some research around programming languages, there's some research about networking, and there's some other kind of research in machine learning. So you can just come and say, oh, I'm interested in machine learning. Yeah, which type of machine learning? Is it machine learning for healthcare? Is it machine learning applied to robotics? Is it machine learning for genetics? So there are so many, is it computer vision? Is it natural language processing? So there are so many areas here. So in general, you want to try to narrow that down to maybe 5 keywords or 4 keywords, you understand? So maybe I'm interested in natural language processing and I'm also interested in healthcare, or I'm interested in computer vision and I'm also interested in healthcare. So you can decide to be interested in some technique, or you can be interested in some area of application. So that's how to go about identifying research interest, and also be very flexible, because you are trying to contact a professor to get so that you can get a funded PhD or a funded master's. So in general, you have to be kind of flexible, to say, okay, this might not be exactly what I want, but I see how it is aligned with what I want. So after you have this research interest, you want to like go through the personal website or research page of the professor of interest. And this is very easy. One thing you can do is to like get the professor's name and like type it on Google and just put like professor's name, Google Scholar. And you would get the Google Scholar profile of that professor. You can also check ResearchGate, but I have a preference for like Google Scholar because I feel like from Google Scholar, you can just like see the kind of work they are doing and what they've done over the years and what they are currently working on now. So you want to ensure that you look at their recent work, like this 2023. So an interesting place for you to look would be like, what is your 2023 papers about? Like what research did they do in 2022? So these are things you would want to do right now. And when should you send these emails? You can start sending right now, even as far as August. Some people even start as early as June. And why I think people start very early is that they want to like send to professors ahead of time, you understand? So they don't want to be like in that last, because like when you send professors emails, some of them would see your email, some of them would miss your email. And so if you've already done the work of figuring out how their research aligns with yours, you can just like go back and send a simple reminder, right? But if you've not done that work, it's like you have to like look at their papers, the introduction and maybe the conclusion, and then try to figure that out. So either way, it's still better to get it early so that you can maybe then remind them monthly or bi-monthly after that period you sent it. And so how to structure your first email. So the first thing you would want to do is there are different ways to do this. I've seen people do it in different ways, but this is basically how I did mine. So I'll just talk based on like how I did mine. So some people would say like it's better to start with introducing yourself, but I started more like with like appreciating the professor's work and like talking about the alignment before I even talk about myself. So people have different perspective on that. So if going by my method, I started by, like I said, appreciating their work, and I did this in a paragraph. And something I did was like, oh, maybe good day, Professor ABC. I was excited when I read through your profile on so website. I would like to have supporting to complete my PhD under your guidance, and I intend to complete this application. Now, mind you, you can also email a professor after the application, but that's kind of like, that's not advice. You're better off doing it before. But then I've also seen cases where if you email after, they'll be like, oh yeah, I saw your application and it was interesting. Let me, let's talk more via Zoom or something. But I'm not advising you to do that because that's like a brute force approach. That's like last minute fire brigade approach. So the second thing is like, I went on to show how their research aligns with mine. And one thing I did was that I mentioned where I found their papers, like Google Scholar, and then, what are their specific interests? And for me, example, this professor was bias and inference and graphical models. In general, like one way to really get these keywords of what they're interested in is by looking at their website. So that would really help you with these keywords. And I was like, oh yeah, but I'm flexible and I've gone through this of your papers, this and this. You can go on to say, make a comment about this paper. Maybe I'm interested in how like the reinforcement learning algorithm did blah, 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 blah in the first paper. And I think one way we can extend it is by doing this. So, but that's optional. You don't have to like just mentioning the papers and like mentioning what you learned from the papers or how the paper interested you is also important. And the third paragraph, in my opinion, is like maybe introduce yourself, mention the relevant awards and your experience and express that alignment. So this was my third paragraph, more like, oh, my name is this, I'm a graduate of blah, blah, blah. Here's my CGPA. So in general, if your CGPA is like, let's say a strong 2-1 or first class, I think it's fine to mention that. Also, they use a 4.0 scale, so you can try to move it from normal Nigeria 5.0 to 4.0 scale. Like that's more relatable to them in general, if it's the US you're thinking of applying to. However, if you feel like your CGPA is not high, don't add it. Just like say what you want, tell us what your experience is. And yeah, so this is more like anything you can do to sell yourself. Say yourself, you were awarded a Dean Award on your graduation, you can mention it. If you've won any best paper award, whatever is like something you think is relevant for this, you can mention it as well. And finally, this is the most important part. Now you've kind of like let them know you appreciate their work. You've talked about which particular papers you found important, and then you've introduced yourself. You can now inquire whether they're accepting graduate students. And it's important to let them know that they're to mention that you know they're busy and that you appreciate their response, and then try to attach your CV and transcript, right? So if you don't have a transcript, which could be understandable if you're in Nigeria and maybe you're processing it and it's taking time to be given to you. If you have a school portal where like your grades were posted yearly or something, you can also go download that and like combine it in a PDF, and that kind of like reflects your courses, the courses you took in school, and as well as your grades in them, right? And then you want to attach your CV. So this is a good sample. And I think this is very key, like letting them know you are available for video calls or interviews on Zoom is great, because you're kind of like, in case the professor is interested in you, they're like, oh, okay, you have just like nudged them to like, or be like, hey, can we talk more via Zoom? You understand? So it's easy for them to like think about having a further discussion with you. So just some additional notes. I'm just going to talk about, I give you one liner about these different things. So you want to send a follow-up email. So many professors will not respond like in your first, will not respond to your first email. So that doesn't mean you have to be like, oh, it's not working. No, what you need to do is like you can remind them after a month. So for example, this September, if you send one like between now and the end of the month, you don't respond. Sometime like at the end of October, you can say, oh, good day. I'm sending a gentle reminder. I acknowledge you are busy, and I'm sending a gentle reminder about my request about you being a supervisor, something like that, something nice, but just a reminder. It doesn't have to be long. You don't have to copy the whole thing and paste it again. You just have to like send this as a reply to the initial email you sent, so that they can just see like what the thread has been since you've been interacting with them. And if you get a positive response, you should respond quickly. If you have like a mentor figure, you can like show them, oh yes, what I'm planning to write, can you have a look? And then they can look at it and like suggest. But then you should like say, oh, it will be more about like getting starting like getting on Zoom with them or something. So that is an interview. It's not just like for you to just chat, like it's a chat, but just know like you're sort of like in an interview setting. And if you receive a negative response, that's fine too. Like you just need like 1 yes, you understand? So in general, not even all positive responses convert into actual admissions, right? So if you receive a negative response, that's when you'll be like, oh, this is not my person. And then you move to the next person, but give yourself time, like about even messaging professors in the same school. Like if you've typed out the stuff, you can schedule it to deliver, like there's this scheduling thing you can use on emails. Like you can just check how to schedule my the delivery of my email, so that let's say you are motivated today and you were able to type so many emails and you don't feel like, oh, I can't send more than one. No, you can put one now and then schedule the other ones to deliver maybe in 2 weeks or in 3 weeks, you understand? And that way you kind of like have you have gotten the work done. And also like be careful about your time, the timing of your email. So be aware that some parts of the US are like 5 hours behind Nigeria time. So you want to like have that in mind. If you feel like it's too late, you can schedule it for a time maybe between 9 a.m. to 2 p.m. or 9 a.m. to 3 p.m. when you're sure these professors will be on your computer. And then that way the probability of them seeing your email is kind of increased. So yeah, thank you so much. And I would be happy to answer any questions you have.
That's a lot of information, promise in a short time, but you pulled it
Thank you,
off.
sir.
Yeah,
Thank you, sir.
well done. Looking at the lineup, do we have any more? Okay. Any questions?
I think there are some for me already left in the chat by Alison.
Okay.
So the first one says, what is my experience applied to Princeton from cold mailing, possible interviews up to admission? So cold mailing works, and it's a very, very good avenue to reach out to these faculty members and start your discussion. And as Promise has clearly spoken to you guys, it's very efficient, and she has clearly stated how to write it. But for me in Princeton, I didn't get in via code mailing professors initially, so I just applied directly. And while my application was being reviewed, a professor reached out to me and was like, "Oh, I saw your application and I would like you to join my lab." And that was how I got to Princeton, basically. So yes, we had an interview, but it was more like a get to know you session, just like a simple chat. Most of the time, as Michael Tao said earlier, most of the time it's just they've seen your SOP, they've seen everything. They just want to be sure that their investments into you would yield. So yield, to be sure, is to access your English capabilities, your thinking capabilities. Okay, you said you had an undergraduate project. What did you learn? What is driving you to pursue graduate school? Things like that. And sometimes it's as simple as just like a summary. So sometimes it's not really very technically or very difficult interview. Then the second question says, how long is the GRE and TOEFL valid? I really apologize for the fact that I omitted this in the presentation. The GRE is valid for 5 years and the TOEFL is valid for 2 years. But I have seen people also submit expired TOEFL, because some schools tend to believe since you've written it once and you've passed it, you have like good scores, then there is no need to take the test over again. So yes, you can. Some people still use the old TOEFL. Then they said, how do you find TOEFL since Nigerians are practicing British English? I'm very sorry to say this, but yes, Nigeria is an English-speaking country, but most of the time it's very efficient that we take these exams, say TOEFL. Sometimes it is not required, but the best way I can approach this is that the TOEFL is not just an affirmative document. It also provides you, yourself, with an avenue to understand how to listen, how to speak, because I might be saying things clearly in English, whereas to someone in London, to someone in Yorkshire in the US, it's almost like they can't understand what I'm saying because of the accent I have. I'm a typical Yoruba boy, so sometimes the Yoruba intonation is still underneath there. So what people really require is you being able to speak clearly and fluently. To an English person, say the British people, the way they speak English is different from us. It's not that we're speaking two different things. It's the same thing, but the way they present it is always different. So that's why most of the times the TOEFL is actually a very, very good leveling ground to make you understand how to read a paragraph, an essay. It gives you the opportunity to actually speak well, because the speaking section is very, very tough for Nigerians. I don't know why. Maybe it's the accent, but yes, it's a very good one. So irrespective of the fact that we're learning British English here in Nigeria, the TOEFL is a very good standardized exam to take. Adolu and Alison, so I would leave you guys to look through these charts if there are still questions that any one of the speakers can address as at now. Is Adeolu there?
Hi, Damola. Thank you very much. Currently, there's no other question. Yes, there's no other question currently in the chat.
Okay.
I think
I'm seeing a
you've
question in the chat box.
okay, Adiolu, please go on.
From Adamu Abdulkarim. Some Nigerian schools provide English proficiency certificates. Is that not considered valid for application?
I guess that's me again. So yes, our school provides certificates for English learning, saying that you were taught in English for the first year to your fifth year. It's valid to some schools, but to some schools it is not valid. Reason is that your English proficiency is a simple letter, but they want to hear from you. They want you to prove it. So sometimes that's why the test is there, to actually prove your English proficiency. The letter might serve to some schools, yes, it might serve. I think to the UK, majority of the schools in the UK do not require Nigerians taking the English proficiency exams. But some schools in the US would require it because they are targeted at being sure that you are proficient. They understand that majority of Nigerians do not speak fluently. So they need to affirm that you speak fluently, you can listen fluently, you can read, you can write effectively. That's why they usually make the proficiency exams mandatory. Is there, I can see one other question. Aremu, can you help read the question so I can?
Okay. From Adetayo Akinsanya, how does one account for a gap in academic years? I haven't done anything related to engineering for a while now. I have been in tech. What can I do to account for this gap to help in my application?
I can take that. The way to show that is just to show you've been productive in the years that you have the gap, right? So if you're an engineering student and you've been in tech, again, the question is not that specific. So what engineering student are you and what in tech are you doing? You know, those are two big words. But either way, try to draw a line between, you know, when you finish school and where you're going. And honestly, this question is more relevant if you're looking for a job. If in the context of what we're talking about here, which is graduate school application, things like your GRE, your statement of purpose, your recommendation letter, they are more important than, you know, the 2, 3, 4 years of work you did after school. So I would say just focus on everything we've talked about in the last 2 hours. Pick the right school. That's very important. Pick, and I'm using this also to provide my closing remarks. Really, pick the right school. It really starts from there. I tell people that will be your number one most important decision that you're going to make, the school you select, because the same you and you could go on a simple thought experiment to prove this. The same you will apply to 4 schools, and maybe 2 will give you admission and 2 will not. What's the difference? It's the same you. It's the schools you pick, because you're not, it's you're showing all of them the same GRE, the same GPA score. You're probably getting your recommendations letters from the same people, and hopefully you're approaching all the schools with the same level of seriousness, and then there are different results. So why? It's because some schools are more fit for you for that time than others. So that will be your I would say do your homework well in picking your schools. And then it goes down from there, your GRE, your TOEFL, your recommendation letters, cold emailing professors, getting very strong reviews and letters, references. And I'll also say one thing I forgot to mention under the interviews is if you do get an interview, I strongly recommend you do a mock session with somebody. Just practice, especially if that's going to be your first interview in a while. After you've done 4, 5 of this, you probably will get into the mood of interviewing. But if you're getting an interview for the first time, I would say I strongly recommend having a mock interview. We are going to be, I want to say thank you, Adiolu, Noesa, FUNAP chapter for the opportunities. It's a privilege for us also really to talk to folks. When you reach out, I wanted to make sure that it's people that came from FUNAB that are speaking to you, so that there will be even a stronger connection. Now I wish that I went to FUNAB, but it's a privilege to speak with the next generation of leaders, and hopefully we have a good engagement also tomorrow and a good turnout. Maybe tomorrow being Saturday, maybe more people are going to show up. We're looking forward to that as well. But I want to say, let the questions keep coming even after this chat is ended. Maybe people can still comment on the YouTube, and then try to collect it tomorrow, and then we'll address as much as possible. Thank you to the speakers. Damola, you did a lot of heavy lifting today. So thank you. Good luck. Thanks for also coming in. I know Zoom is probably not your cup of tea, but hopefully now you're a Zoom expert. And Promise, that was you probably won the award for dishing out the most information in the shortest amount of time. And then, of course, Adilo and Alison, thanks for you guys organizing this and going back and forth and discussing the logistics. It's been a real pleasure. Also for me, just to see how you guys are making things happen. And with that, I would say have a wonderful evening, and I will see you all tomorrow.